everyone, and welcome to the Fringe North podcast. My name is Caitlin Townsend. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the project coordinator for this year's festival. And I have with me here today Donovan. Would you like to take a minute to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your submission for this year?
Yeah, hi. My name is Donovan. I am he, they, and I am the founder, creator, producer, everything for Reverie Theatre. And my submission this year will be called, or is called, To the Edge of the Universe. It's a shadow puppetry fairy tale about friendship and respect.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. So would you like to share a little bit about what inspired this project and how it came to be?
For sure. So the style of storytelling I chose because it was a way that wasn't necessarily me just sitting in front of camera because this project was developed during COVID. So I had already done, a sort of monologue, just straight up kind of talking to the camera. And I wanted to try something a little bit different that I thought was a little bit more engaging of the imagination. And so shadow puppetry is so like, it takes your mind to different places and your brain like fills in the gaps that, that the shadow puppetry just doesn't quite fully always tell. Um, but then we did use a little bit of a difference of using a projector to project our backgrounds. Because sometimes usually it's just, like a white screen and the shadow puppet, and that's fine. And you can do that with atmosphere as well. But we use my projector, and then that way it's a little bit more of like an engaging background that moves with shadow puppets. Um, and the idea for it, like the story itself, a lot of times I kind of listen to music on Spotify or whatever that is in the mood that I'm trying to create. And then I just kind of go with whatever comes to me and I just start free writing. And usually it always comes up with something that's very about self-improvement or very self-awareness and trying to get a message across that is about, what you can do on an individual level to try and help yourself or help your others. Uh, Regardless of circumstance. I try to keep it really broad and open so more people can feel relatable to it and to the experiences that happen, as fantastical as they may be. But yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. So it's kind of got like that deeper underlining message to your art then.
Exactly. I love it's a huge debate, right? Like, art for art's sake. And while that can exist and be its own thing, and I appreciate art that can seem that way, but in the end, even if someone said they created something just for the sake of creating it, people will inevitably create meaning out of it, right?
Hmm.
Like from your own personal experiences. So so for me, it's like maybe just like put a little bit more thought into it. Maybe people can have more of a deeper personal connection.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really exciting. So in terms of you've been doing this for a few years, like it being in the artistic space. So I'm wondering, because this project was birthed in COVID and it came about through the pandemic, um, what strategies do you use to kind of shift your art compared to your approaches you might have been using before the pandemic, and how have you gone about that?
Right. So when I created work for in-person live performance, a big focus of mine is the atmosphere. And so it's how do you create atmosphere in a digital world, right? Some people can kind of do that with, that really comes across in like horror films, right? It's all about mood and atmosphere because that's how you get the fear across, right? That suspense. So like how do you do that when you're not creating horror? It's how do you do that? And especially with the lens of theater and live performance. And so I tried to do my best for creating atmosphere in that when I first worked on this project, I had the idea of that you're going to a friend's house for a sleepover. And so the story started outside and then it worked its way into the apartment and then into like a bed sheet fort. And then like the camera would set itself. So like the viewer was like the friend coming over and then I was like wearing pajamas and I was just like, oh hey, you're here. What are we gonna do? Let's tell stories, right? So
That's
that
really
was
cool.
like an attempt of just kind of recreating what I would do as if people were with me.
Mhm.
But it's very challenging. And I had thought about the idea of creating a theater box, which some companies have already done, where you're mailed a box of like tactile experiences or aromatic, and then you engage with that in with also like a video or audio file, and then as the audio and video is going, you engage the objects to kind of give you that sort of live in-person experience
Mhm.
while a story is being told. But COVID wasn't going to last forever, right? So I didn't invest too much in the idea, and other people got to it, so it's good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So in terms of like audience experience, as they're experiencing that different atmosphere and like pulling them into your project essentially. So how would you say this works in a digital format for this particular piece, and how will audiences who come to Fringe North this year be like immersed in the digital sphere?
I guess a lot of it, from my own personal experiences, you really have to. This could be a lot of pretense beforehand, or just on the person themselves. They kind of have to understand what they're engaging with, and just
Hmm.
like I'm going to engage with like someone who's like my neighbor, because there'll be a lot of people involved who are in the zoo, or even people across the globe, and this isn't going to be a typical TV show or even short film. It's going to be a very unique experience. So going into that, you're already kind of like open to like what may happen. Of course, the space around you isn't going to necessarily change, but the digital screen space will change in a way you're probably not used to. And that's
That
what will
sounds
kind of get people in there.
mhm. That sounds really exciting and kind of mysterious a little bit too, in a good way. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what are you hoping that festival viewers gain from this piece, and what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope if anyone hasn't engaged with some sort of live performance yet in a digital way, I'm hoping that festival viewers will kind of see what the the perseverance of live performing artists, and seeing how they are able to continue on without just kind of giving up, despite a lot of people will say, especially like theater is a dying art form, and it's like, no, it will never die. Like maybe it's not in vogue, it's not popular as with like digital content, even before COVID, but it's something that will always be there because it's such a very human thing to tell stories, and
Mhm.
especially in a very live way. And that when people engage with the Fringe this year, that perhaps they'll engage with the Fringe next year and live, and get that full experience of being in a space of other people and listening to someone just tell their stories.
Yeah, that's great. So in terms of when you speak about like theater never dying, and I completely agree. I think it'll always be here. But to you as an artist, and everyone has their own take on this, but like for your take, what is the heart of theater, and what makes it that unique element compared to these other digital forms, and especially creating like a digital version of that? Like, what is the heart of theater that sets it apart from other things?
Mhm. It is. I'm going to try and say this as succinctly as possible. I may not, because I haven't fully formulated this idea before, but it's that it is the heart to heart storytelling live experience.
Mhm.
So when I say that, when people watch TV or film, or a lot of film can really be really heart wrenching, right? But there is still a disconnect. You're not
Mhm.
part of the experience. It's I am watching someone else's experience of what's going on, and it's making me feel things. Whereas with theater is I'm a part of what's happening right now because it is like physically in front of me, and I'm connecting to this experience on an empathetic level. So it's the empathy and engaging storytelling. It's like at its heart, that's what theater is. You're just telling stories and you're connecting with people.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's so true with like the it's speaking more directly to you than like a medium like film. And I think elements of that can pop up in film when that characters break the fourth wall, say, but it's not that same level. It's sort of like a hint at the heart of theater, but not like the same expression that theater itself does.
It's theater so very intimate, and even if you're in a large space, like for example in Toronto, if you're in the Princess of Wales Theater, it's a very large theater, right? But if the piece that you're seeing on stage is really told genuinely and honestly, and like the performers are very like in the moment and engaged on what's going on, like that will read to the back of the
Mhm.
audience. And even though you can't necessarily see the little freckle details on a person's face, you'll still feel that. And that's what really got to me is when I was in like a large theater space when I was a little kid, and how, in particularly like with, I'm from Winnipeg, and there's a space there called Rainbow Stage, and it's an outdoor theater, and typically they put on musicals there. And to me, I thought it was such a transformative experience being like, I could be so far away, but I could still feel the things from all the little ant people, so far
Mhm.
away. And that's what really got me into live performance in general, is that people will say that they will go to the theater or TV or film that they want to escape their world problems, right? It's a lot of people who view it as an escape, but for myself, I personally view it as a way to live. And when I say what I mean that is like I feel really engaged with life, and I'm feeling things because I'm going through the experience of what's happening in front of me. And that's why through my own life journey that I've been through, I really want to feel things. I want to feel like I'm alive. I want to feel like I'm engaged with the world around me. And for me, live performance does that. I feel like instead of escaping, I, I actually like become alive.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because with like theater, it's that exchange of energy that you don't get with like the film experience. And like when you say like with film, you're often like watching somebody else's experience rather than being drawn into it. I think with theater, it's that exchange of energy and like highlighting our own energy within us. And I think that can be done even digitally as well, which is why digital theater is so different than film in and of itself too, right? Even though it's technically still the same technology, it's a very different use of it, I think.
Yeah, and I think it also a part of that is like you can really tell how people engage with the medium differently. Because like I should have prefaced this, like this is no like knock to film artists whatsoever. Beautiful work, love it, keep doing it. I watch it all the time, right? Like movies, I love it. But it's just it's different, right?
Mhm.
And when like theater or live performing artists engage in a digital way, you kind of see the difference. And part of it, yes, let's just get out of the way, it is an experience using the medium. But you can see, I've seen over time that people have used it in a really interesting way and have seen the capabilities. And I think what's different is that live performing artists will kind of try to use the medium to its full extent and in unexpected ways, instead of adhering to kind of like, whatever the laws of film may be, where it's like about angles and lighting and framing and like showing what you want the audience to see and all that. Whereas live performers are kind of like, this is what you're seeing. I have a
Mhm.
background right now, but
Yeah.
it's like what you see, everything there is part of it, and I will engage with it in different ways. And like it's also like the one take. And I know there are some films that are done in one take, and lots of people are like, oh my gosh, doing film in one take, that's so amazing. And it's like, yeah, go to your local theater and you'll see one take right there, right? Like at the same time, and it's happening right in front of you. Or like live TV, it's like, oh, this is being recorded live, and it's like, yeah, that's totally great, especially when you have like the budget to do such like all the bells and whistles.
Mhm.
But it's also like you can see live things, well, before COVID and once COVID is
Yeah.
over, you can see live performance art all the time. At least in Toronto, there's always something going on, right? And from what I know about the Sioux, there are little pockets here and there of things going on, that hip hop scene, right? It's like people just need to try to engage with it, try and find it out there, and
Mhm.
then you'll always be a part of what's happening around you. And that is life. That's my soapbox.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious because you shared about like being in Winnipeg as a kid and experiencing the theater and um, that energy that comes with it and that. But in terms of choosing for this particular project to be like shadow puppets, what drew you to that medium and to use theater in that way and integrate that?
um, so I guess I've sort of touched on this on a little bit already, but it's I like being having my world kind of like engaged with in some way when I'm watching live performance, and when I create live work, I really try to focus on all the senses. And as I said, I haven't really fully engaged in that in the digital way. Like you can't really engage with smell digitally unless I send them something, right? So like I mentioned that earlier, I had that idea to try and like give people things. So within the Fringe context and like transforming the experience, I felt that shadow puppetry is just it is a little bit unexpected because I don't think a lot of people have watched shadow puppetry in a digital context,
Mhm.
or that you could watch documentaries of it, or maybe there are some shows of it, but I feel like it's uncommon. And just the way that I've used the shadow puppetry again, like using my projector, in a way to help transform the world of the shadow puppets as well, right? So it becomes a little bit more engaging as well because it's not just little figures on a stick with opposing arms, right? It's something a little bit more, and then that's I guess that's the essence of it, of trying to give something that you may expect, but then give a little bit more, right? And
Mhm.
really do something maybe unique and unexpected. And that when people engage with that, I find that people are like more involved in what's going on.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and especially like with that unexpectedness, when you're watching like something that you kind of know what's coming next, sometimes you disengage a little bit because you can miss a piece and not miss the story as a whole. But when things are like unexpected, if you miss a piece, you don't know what's happening anymore. So it like keeps that engagement up. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's fine to have stories follow a typical plot line, but then you run into the issue that people become disengaged of what's going on because
Mhm.
they'll be like, "Oh, I know what happens next. That person's gonna die. That person is the person who did it."
Yeah.
Candlestick in the library or whatever, right? Which is like it's fine, but then you need to try and flip it on its head on its in a certain way, or really do something unique about with telling the story, right? You don't always have to have like such the great plot twist that like mystery really tries to endeavor to do, which it's great, have a plot twist. But even like I was saying, even if you tell a story that's very typical, or you kind of see where it's going, you got to have some sort of like little pop, a little
Mhm.
firecracker here and there, and then that people go, oh, I never thought of this typical storyline in this way, right? Or
Mhm.
this perspective, right? What's popular right now with film is that they're doing a lot of Disney movies from the villain's perspective, right? Cruella and Maleficent and all this stuff, right? So it's like you're getting a new perspective, and it's great because it's really humanizing them and kind of showing that people aren't just evil, like
Yeah.
Wicked, right? That musical, right? Like, are people born wicked or have it thrust upon them, right? It's like, well, you got to know people's life story, and I feel like that helps people engage with the world around them in a different way. So there you go, right? It's like telling a typical story but different. So my shadow puppets are telling a story that it is geared towards a young audience for sure, but I think if adults watch it, they'll get a little something from it. It is humorous for all ages, and it teaches a good reminder of respecting people's identities and how they choose to represent themselves.
That's awesome. Sounds really exciting. I'm thrilled to be able to get to watch it this year and that you're part of our festival. Um, so I'm just noticing the time. So one last question. What are you hoping as an artist to get out of being involved in the festival this year? And yeah, what are you hoping to get out of it?
I'm hoping to learn from other artists. I as an artist, you always have to be engaged with the world around you, and you always have to be learning and experiencing new things. And I find it's really refreshing to hear other people's perspectives. And I just want to see how people engage with the world around them and their views of the world. And usually that might spark something inside me for a new story or a new way of telling stories, right? And that it's an ever changing amoebus thing, right? Where I feel artists have this connection with each other and there's an exchange of ideas, right? And kind of furthering each other. The more you engage with
Mhm.
each other, right? And to push forward without, unless people are using very like culturally specific means of storytelling, not appropriating that, but things that can be used by everyone,
Mhm.
and used respectfully.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. It's kind of like that co-creation where we build off of each other and each other's experiences. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about your journey as an artist or about your submission for this year's festival?
I would like to just wrap this up on my perspective is when you read the descriptions of all the works, including my own, keep an open mind. And you know what? Just watch it, engage
Mhm.
with it in some way, because you may be really surprised, because that is what Fringe is about. It's stories being told on the fringes of society and being told in very unique, peculiar, awesome, weird ways. And you might find yourself really surprised with what you will see.
Mhm.
Just take a chance.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for your time today as well. For those watching, the festival runs from August 19th to the 22nd with a sneak preview on the night before on the 18th. So come out, buy tickets, support Donovan, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you for your time, Donovan, today, and thank you all for watching. Miigwech, merci, and gracias for your time. See you in August. Bye. Thank you for watching our podcast. Merci, miigwech, gracias. If you like what we're doing, you can support Fringe North and the artists involved in this year's festival financially so that we can continue this work. Visit www.fringenorth.ca to find out more.